Wow, Molly, we are going live. Who do you want to do a shout out to?
Shout out to, well, first of all, everyone watching. Thank you for watching. But shout out to my husband who's also watching. Yay.
Awesome. Shout out to the husband. Here we go. Guys, our guest today shares her insights on the second coming and what Jesus is expecting versus what we all expect and everyone thinks, and how we should all be excited either way. This is a topic we never ever get into, and we are jumping into it head first all the way down today. Molly Skye Brown, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
I am excited to talk about this. When we started just chatting a little bit before in the green room, I was like, I had no idea all this stuff was actually in Revelations,
Right?
and it's not even like talking about Revelations. Whatever you're talking about is a different thing than what everyone else is talking about.
Well, there's so many books and things to pull from. So I think it's such an interesting topic. And throughout my education, throughout my childhood, I was in and out of really fancy Catholic school teachings, public school, and then back to Catholic school at times. And we read the book of Revelation and we talked about the second coming. And, it was really funny going from Montessori school, kindergarten and first grade, and being in their honors gifted program, and then second grade going right into hardcore Catholicism and learning all about this guy named Jesus. And he's coming back, and he's the new the first Houdini, the original Houdini. It was really, really interesting to me to hear this conversation, because I'd only heard about Jesus through my mother and then my father's version of Catholicism, which was kind of stressed and strained. So that propelled me to really investigate more about who this Jesus guy was and what the whole earth is expecting with this second coming that's been prophesized. And what does it look like and what are we expecting? And the book of Revelation and all its horrors is taking the front and center stage, and not the best part, which is the hope. Wow. The best part is there's supposed to be 1,000 years of peace happening really soon.
Well, I'm all down for the 1,000 years of peace. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
So, okay, just for all the people that didn't go to church when they were like little,
Yeah.
and all the people that have forgotten about what Revelations is, one, let's talk about what is the second coming,
Yeah.
and then what is Revelations, and how does that tie into what we're going to talk about today?
Yeah, so it's been heavily speculated what the second coming is. It's been researched and a lot of conversations on it, and a lot of different branches of Christianity have their different speculations and prophecies of what that's supposed to look like. And it's so interesting when I talk to people, and even my uncle is a retired pastor. They don't seem to have an idea of what the second coming truly is. And I find that interesting, because what should we be looking out for? What should we be looking for? Is he reincarnating? Is he coming back through a human vessel again? That's not what any of us have heard. And yet I talk to people and that's what they're expecting. So where is that written in any of our books, in any of these teachings, that Jesus is being born again, which then we would believe in reincarnation, which doesn't talk about in Catholicism. They really don't get into reincarnation. They say Jesus will come through the veil. He will come through the clouds. And we don't know what that means. Does he come through physical clouds? Now we have all these data clouds. Is he coming through that kind of cloud? And that's where I think I'm going. So there's just been a big cloud of mystery around this whole second coming thing. And then no one wants to talk about it either. It's so fascinating to me. And as a child growing up and witnessing that no one really had these conversations, it was interesting to me, because people claimed to be religious, went to church every Sunday, but then avoided conversations like this at all costs. We didn't talk about the second coming. We didn't talk about Revelations. It was just Sunday and then school during the week, but not talking about these things with other people.
I got to ask you a question. You brought this up, and I never really thought about it until you literally said this a second ago.
Uh-huh.
And that is, we're all expecting, or one who looks at Revelations or goes to church, Jesus to come back in a physical form. And I was like, wait a second, what are you talking about here? So why does everyone assume that, and what do you think it's
That's what I want to know. I want to know why people think this, or where they're hearing this, where they're reading it, if they're hearing it in their churches, then this is where the conversation needs to be had. is what are we expecting? What is supposed to be happening? Because like I said, I have conversations with people who say that they're Christian, or they say that they're Catholic, or whatever strain of Christianity. And like I said, they're expecting Jesus to be born of a human vessel again. And that's not what we've been prepared for in the slightest, because the revelations and
So what
the
have we been
prophecies,
prepared for?
well, that's what they were saying. He was going to come back in his original recognizable body, flesh, recognizable identity, I guess is the best way to say it, because it doesn't say that he will come in the flesh as a born again person that we would need to look out for. I mean, that's the Dalai Lama's thing.
Well, didn't Jesus do that in the resurrection? When he
Right.
put
Yes.
forth the stone? He already did that once.
Right. Whatever that is. So it sounds like that's a part 2 of a resurrection. So it would be original body. It would be original identity. It would be a recognizable Jesus, Yeshua, Yahweh. You know what I mean? If he's
Yeah.
born again, then we're focusing on a human vessel that's not going to look the same as the original. And the whole prophecy is you will recognize him and he will recognize you. He will call you by your name, and coming through the clouds, coming through the veil. So, I mean, just I've been talking about this, I want to say for about 8 years now is where I really started talking about this. And
Mhm.
it just blows me away how few people want to have any kind of conversation about this, or get anywhere with the conversation, because they don't have any thoughts about the second coming. They really haven't thought about it. And it's crazy to me. We are a predominantly Christian world, and no one knows when he's coming back, or what it's supposed to look like, or having conversations about it, and really spreading the word of what we should be expecting. The book of Revelation, I feel like it's unfolding right now. And I won't get into the trumpet and the Antichrist and the false Messiah parts of it, but I will pinpoint that I feel like we found the whore of Babylon with Ghislaine Maxwell.
Talk about that a little bit, because I know when we were originally talking, you had said that you had been invited to some of the parties that
Yeah.
she was having and these sorts
Yeah.
of things. And how did those parties tie into revelations and the things that you've learned?
Right, sure. So I feel like God set me up to be an investigative martyr, which that's my human design. If anyone's into human design, it's based on your birth chart. But I am an investigative martyr. So that means I am willing to put myself in the flame in situations to get the truth, to get the story, which I only realized that about myself recently when I learned human design. But it made a lot of sense about myself, because like I told you in the green room before, I thought God was a sociopath for what he was putting me through. I was meeting predators and pedophiles and gatekeepers, and being brought to Epstein, Maxwell, Trump parties in Palm Beach, trying to pimp me out, trying to exploit me, trying to hurt me, trying to sell me, trying to own me, trying to control me. And I first met Ghislaine Maxwell at 14, 15 years old. She approached me at a gym in Palm Beach County as a child, and she was very encouraged that I looked over 18 as a 15-year-old. And so that being part of that, being brought into the belly of the beast repeatedly, and being able to get back out with knowledge and information, really has emboldened me to speak up and really put pieces together. But it's encouraged me to see that God has been here the whole time, and that he has
You are
seen
the
me
first
through.
person I've actually talked to who has firsthand knowledge of what went on at these parties and things. So I
They do
assume
not
that
like me talking about it, because I am not a controlled piece. I am not an actual victim that was videotaped, and went through the whole process. So they really don't like me speaking up, because I am an outside piece of the network trying to put pieces together for everyone else to put together. And the network's controlled. I mean, they are cleaning that up internally. Obviously, we're not seeing
when you say the
arrests.
network's controlled, which network are you talking about?
So if you look at the attorneys that are handling this, they're not good people. They handle bad people stuff all the time. I don't know if you curse on the show, but stuff all the time. And they are the cleanup crew. They're the fixers. We're not getting arrests. We know who were at some of these parties. We know who were at the island. And I mean, we're seeing it. We're being failed miserably.
Yeah.
But both parties, both sides of our government are corrupt. It is both sides, because it is both sides of the FBI and the CIA. I mean, they're all corrupt. My uncles used to traffic Playboy models to presidents, the JFK. My uncles were bad people and very close with Hugh Hefner in Los Angeles. They were not good people. And my father protected us from them. And my father is the one who encouraged me to understand human trafficking and to not trust all of these opportunities I was getting. Because, I mean, since I was in second grade, people were approaching me for modeling. And then when they learned I could sing, and I've been performing since kindergarten, I was the lead in a show in kindergarten and made the newspaper. So my dad was very concerned with all the people that were interested in exploiting or promoting a career out of me, especially at a young age. And then my mother, being brought up from the Midwest, was rose-colored glasses and wanted the best for me and didn't understand that people actually can be monsters. She never really met many. So it was an interesting dynamic between my parents, where my father grew up in the belly of elite Hollywood and my mother with the rose-colored glasses, very spiritual, and my dad hardcore Catholic. So it's influenced so much of my life to investigate so much of religion and sex abuse and the entertainment industry and what God is trying to reveal with all of this and the second coming in all of this. And it's this culmination coming through right now. Like I said, I believe Ghislaine Maxwell is the whore of Babylon mentioned in the book of Revelation. And that is a marker for me to know that the second coming is nigh. it's coming, it's here.
So your personal story, your journey, has led you from Ghislaine Maxwell to the Book of Revelations, to becoming more of a profound and follower of Christianity.
Yeah.
And that's how you got really into Revelations and understanding what it really means.
Well, in 2015, so I have a podcast. It gets a little weird because I can see and talk to Jesus. He has been my imaginary friend since I was a child. I didn't know who he was at the time until I started Catholic school, and I saw him everywhere, and I got really freaked out by it. And that's another thing I talk about as well, is the religious institutions can sometimes pull apart your relationship with God and Jesus and pull you further away from them, even if you were close to them to begin with before you were introduced to religion. And then organized religion, it made me seem like they punish people who speak up. That was what I was getting all around me, is this guy has been nailed to the cross for speaking up and doing good things. And it was very hard to take that in second grade and see that you still should be speaking up. So when I was being abused in second grade by neighbors, being targeted by predators, I didn't know how to speak up. And seeing that guy nailed on a wall didn't encourage me to speak up. I will tell you that right now. As an adult, I can look back and see all of that and see the programming and talk my way out of it and talk people through religious programming. But I mean, like I was saying on my podcast, I've seen Jesus since I was a child. When I was abused in second grade by one of my neighbors, is basically when I told Jesus and God to go away. I didn't want any more.
Even right now, you can see, you can communicate directly with.
Of course.
That is something we all kind of wish we could do, right?
Everyone can. That is the point of Catholicism and Christianity and religion. I mean, I went to Catholic school, did all the weird rituals. I married Jesus in second grade, did confirmation, did communion. Communion is speaking with the dead. I mean, isn't that the whole ritual? So I went through rituals. I could do it already. And the two worlds kept colliding because the nuns don't like that you have gifts. They're very, very scared by them. And then on top of that, they're encouraging you to do rituals and blindly praying on rosaries for all sorts of things, but not really truly connecting and having a relationship back and forth. That is, that the nuns are like, yes, I can see you're talking to Jesus and he's talking back. They think that's nuts. And it's like, then what is Catholicism if it's not schizophrenia then?
Wow. So when you actually talk to Jesus, is it a meditative state? Is it all-time state?
It's active. I can feel impressions of energy, and I always have been able to, and they come through a lot during dreams. And I would wake up as a child thinking dead relatives were still alive because they would come and contact me in dreams, and I would tell my mother or my father about my dreams. In high school also, or middle school, I got a hold of a Ouija board, and my mom taught me how to use it through the light and to use Jesus and God with it. And I mean, we got crazy stuff through that. My grandmother came through and told us where her will was hidden in the house and where we could find it. And I told my father about it that night, and he turned white because he was like, oh my God, that's where she hid her will and her ring and stuff in her mansion in Hollywood. So I've gotten confirmation time and time again that it is real. The gifts are real, and I need to lead. I need to just accept it and hone it and do something with it. And what I've learned is it's,
Yeah.
you know, this thing that we talk about, we don't talk about reincarnation, but I feel like all of my lives have led to this one, and all of everyone's have led to this one. They're all like congruent and tangent and means something to keep going with them.
I
So
think that's fascinating. That's amazing. I want to go back to where you're talking with Jesus versus what other people think about the second coming,
yeah,
because
sure. So in
that is one of the things that I just am fascinated by, is what does Jesus expect the second coming to be versus what we think the second coming
Sure,
is.
sure. I'll tell you about that right now. So in 2015, I had another suicide attempt. I tried to end my life once again. And after that suicide attempt, they gave me very hardcore prescription medications to numb my mind and body. And Archangel Michael appeared to me. I could see him and feel him. And he said, don't go on those, that just detox off of everything and to tune into them. And so I did. I tuned into them again. This was 2015. And I remember one day I was laying in bed. I just couldn't move. I was just stricken with paralysis of PTSD, of being scared to speak up. I am still scared to speak up. I get harassment. I have targeted people from that network that want to silence me and cash in on it. So it's very scary for me. So like I was saying, in 2015, I couldn't get out of bed, and Archangel Michael was reminding me that momentum builds more momentum. If I can get out of bed and shake that off, then I can get going on my day, and I can release that captivity of fear around me. Once I start moving, all of that shifts. So I agreed with him and went for a walk. And while I was on that walk, I was walking with my son to a park, and I saw, which all of meditation is your imagination. And that's what Jesus was trying to explain to us. The kingdom is within. The kingdom is in your imagination. You will get guidance, ideas, and communication through your imagination if you just sit with it and keep going with it. So that's what I had learned. So I was on my way to the park with my son, and I see Jesus sitting under a tree, floating, sitting under a tree, just meditating, and his eyes are closed. And I looked at him and I said, where the hell have you been? And all of this is in my imagination. I didn't say it vocally because my son was with me, and I just think I'm nuts. So, but I've always thought I'm nuts, so I've always gone with it. So he sitting under a tree. He opens up one eye and he looks at me and he says, I have been here the whole time. You turned around. And I said, I don't know what that means, but I need to talk to you. Please don't disappear. And he said, go take your son to the park. I will meet you at your house, and I'm not leaving. We're together. We're talking. I took my son to the park, tried to focus that Jesus just ran into me and that he's going to go hang out at my house and wait for me. So I'm at the park. My son is playing, and I think to myself, that was crazy. That's not happening. Jesus is not waiting for me at my house to come educate me on whatever. So, and then I hear him, and I could feel him from a distance. He was at my house projecting from my home, and he was saying, I am here and I am waiting for you. There is no rush. Please do not cut your son's play date short, but I am here waiting for you. And we left and we went back home, and I sat down, and Jesus threw the book of Revelation at my feet. And he said, you will know the time is nigh, or whatever, the time is near. It was the part of Revelation where it says they will recoil in his name. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, because that was me. I was one of the recoilers. So I knew exactly what he was talking about. And I said, oh, are we in Revelation? Is that finally the time? Like, I was sassy, angry. I wanted to die. And I still struggle with this a lot. That's why I'm so hardcore in my faith, because there has to be a reason our lives are like this, or at least mine has been the way it has been. So he told me he was not leaving. He told me that he was the poor man's coach, because I told him I needed coaching and I couldn't afford it at the time. My business had blown up after 10 years of success, which I see also as God saying, I need you over here. I need you to do this. So at the time, it was devastating. But now I understand that, yes, God needed me to be in a different place and to serve from another area. But in the time it's happening, it's terribly scary. So anyway, so Jeff, that's my husband's name. Jesus throws the book of Revelation at my feet, and he tells me that they will recoil in his name at this time. And I, like I said, I identified with that. I knew I was one of those recoilers. When I heard the name Jesus, it sounds tainted. It sounds like condemnation, Jesus, condemnation and judgment and anger. And that's all I ever heard from these pastors and preachers, just horrible, horrible stuff. So it tuned me out from all the religion. So I was hanging out with him in his room, and I told him the name Jesus. It was very triggering to me. And he said, well, what's the funniest name you can think of for me? And like a smartass, I said, Frank. And he bowed and he said, then I am Frank the Messiah. And it delighted me that he was not angry with me for recoiling in his name. He wasn't angry at me for saying, I don't like your name at all right now. The word name Jesus triggers me and it pushes me further away from you. He understood all of that. So for 3 days, he pranced around as Frank and was teaching me the laws of truly manifesting, of understanding law of attraction and understanding trauma with manifesting, that your predominant thought is what creates your reality. So if you're traumatized, you really don't have control of your thoughts.
Right.
So he, so for 3 days he went by Frank. And on the third day, I told him, I thought I was being very disrespectful. I told him that I wanted to call him by a name that wasn't Jesus. And he said, I am known by many names. I'm the light, the one, the way, Yahweh, Yeshua. And I said, I don't have any problems with Yahweh and Yeshua. So I called him Yeshua for about 3 years. And that's when he taught me self-baptism, which that was a fascinating journey. He brought in John the Baptist for that. And he showed up with his head on a platter and I knew it was him.
I guess so, yes.
I know how you ended. So then he taught me how to self-baptize myself. And then Jesus taught me how to activate Jesus as my bouncer firewall. And it's just been so interesting and fascinating, the journey since doing that. So in 2017 is when he taught me this Yeshua 2.0 activation, which was activating the Christ consciousness within you. And I gave it to a bunch of people and I beta tested it. And the results I got were, they were insane. Everyone who did the activation heard from him. They met with him. They saw him. They activated him. And I was so scared to do this because I have always felt the same as Jesus, that I'll be abandoned. You know, Jesus said when he showed up to me and I was calling him Frank, he was like, you have no idea how much as a society and me, I empathize with all of you. I was persecuted. I thought my father had abandoned me. I thought he was a sociopath. My last words were, why have you abandoned me? Why have you forsaken me? And then his final last words were, forgive everyone. They don't know what the hell they're doing. Which famous last words we still don't.
So what is it that you've learned from him over all these years that the second coming is actually going to be, as opposed to what we want? That's what I really want to know. I want to feel
the clincher is he doesn't tell me everything because there needs to be surprises and not everyone's going to believe everything that I say. But one of the things he's asked me to do is write a musical. And it has to do with Jesus. And it's a modern version of the second coming, of what that might look like. And he's helping the character through the veil to understand herself, empower herself, and free herself from a world that she ends up in, that she's not happy in, and she's not on her real life path. But it's very encouraging, very positive, very uplifting, very fun, very funny. It's not Jesus Christ Superstar, which was a big downer, but very beautiful. I mean, well done. That restored my faith. That helped me stay close to Jesus and God when religion was pushing us away very, very far. Musical theater has always been my outlet. And I feel like God has always made that part of my path and my journey. And when I was 16 years old, I was assaulted again. I got away before anything escalated, but it was a man that used to do my hair for pageants and modeling and stuff when I was in high school. He invited me over one day and I thought he was gay. So I went over to his house thinking everything was going to be fine. And he put moves on me and I was underage. I was a minor at the time and he was in his 30s. So I got out of there. I escaped. I got out of the car. I got in the car and I remember just telling God, I was like, oh my God, thank you for getting me out of there. Thank God that didn't escalate. And as I was at a stop sign, I saw a vision of the future, that I was with this man who's my husband now, but he looks exactly like he does now. At the time, I didn't recognize him. And I even didn't recognize him when I met him because it was a vision of the future of about right now. But when I was 16 years old, God showed me the man I would marry and that we would be writing a musical together, because the vision I saw was him winning an award for a Broadway musical. And I just thought I was his trophy wife because that was my conditioning growing up, was basically what I was going to be. And I thanked God for the vision. I didn't know what it was. I thought it was just my imagination, and really thought nothing of it other than I guess I end up someone's trophy wife who's a producer later on. So I'm not a trophy wife. We're equals. It's wonderful. It's even better than what I had interpreted from the vision. But it's so great to see that God put me on that path. So that's part of the second coming. The second coming is, I mean, Jesus is going to have his own thing, and it's going to be for the followers, and it's going to be for the naysayers, because he's got to prove his own points. This is his second coming. This is his big deal. But I don't know if you're familiar, but Dallas Jenkins, he's been producing The Chosen.
Okay.
Phenomenal show, millions of viewers, and it's been done a completely new way of crowdfunding and paying it forward with millions of dollars. They were able to save this one network that Disney demolished. They sued Angel Studios for like $60 million. And the Jesus Chosen guy went with that company and was able to build them back up. So that's Angel Studios. So I'm trying to get work for them and produce shows and movies and TV shows and cartoons through their platform too. So that's part of the second coming. How is that not through the cloud, through the veil? It's literally streamed through the cloud. Jesus says, I will come through the cloud. I will come through the veil. That is exactly what it means, folks. It does not mean he's going to be born of another 14-year-old. That's my picture. That's Virgin Mary holding a pregnancy test, and she's 14, and she has a shirt that says OMG.
That's awesome. That is awesome. So I love your interpretation. I like the way that your life has come together, basically, and you've got this whole way of seeing things that makes sense if you stop and you listen to what you're trying to say. I want other people to be able to get in touch with you, find your podcast.
Oh, sure.
Listen to. Let me show you. Let's bring up your website here, and I think people can get to you through mollyskybrown.mykajabi.com.
Yeah, I use Kajabi platform. I have
Kajabi's awesome, by the way.
Yeah, it's such a great platform. And this is what I mean. We have no gatekeepers anymore. God taught me production. God gave me Kajabi. God gave me you. I know broadcasting. I was born into a broadcasting family. My grandfather was one of the founding fathers of radio. My father ran a radio station, one of my grandfather's radio stations when I was younger. I did the morning announcements all through high school. I did them in college too for radio and television. I worked in a recording studio. So God has prepared me for everything. I even took Latin in high school. I took debate team. I took speech. I did all of these things having no idea what they were going to lead me to. And they were everything God needed me to do to be able to be successful today. And like I said, there's no more gatekeepers. After 2020, I mean, that's when everything was broken. And plagues and stuff started breaking free. By 2022, Jesus had told me 2022 is the year of the survivor, and that all curses are broken.
And people can find you on your Kajabi. They can also find more about you through your Linktree for sure.
Yes, yeah, totally.
Linktree Molly Skye Brown. That's a perfect one. And of course, Instagram Molly Skye Brown.
Yeah.
And this one we didn't talk about as much, but we will have to have you back on and talk about.
I get a lot of trouble on Twitter. They don't like me.
We will have you back on and talk about that in the future. I love what you're talking about. I love your vision of how you see things and how Jesus is talking to you to see things. I need to learn more about it from you too. So. Oh,
I'm happy to share. My podcast is on Apple Podcasts. It's Let's Be Frank with Molly Skye Brown.
Let's Be Frank. Yeah, I got that one.
I know, and that's what I mean. I meant to call him Frank.
Yeah.
Because now I have the podcast of being Frank and then literally being Jesus.
I love that.
Love it. Love it. Couldn't have done it myself.
I love the way you put it together. Thank you, Molly Skye Brown, for being on.
Thank you for having me.
Talk to you in the future. Actually, I'll talk to you in just a few minutes. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.